Welcome everyone to Buddhist Center. My name is Jeff Allen, and today, or this evening rather, once again, we're looking at the topic of Bodhicitta according to Panchen Sonandrapa's general meaning of perfection. We're so fortunate to look at such a thorough text and be able to understand the mind that aspires to enlightenment extremely well, so we know we're not missing out on any details, because like we say over and over and over again, it's the only door into the Mahayana. The Mahayana is the only vehicle that ends up at complete Buddhahood. So if we want to have complete Buddhahood, if we want to have the infinite bliss of a Buddha, and we want to have complete fearlessness that the Buddha has, then the only entrance into the success of that, the only entrance into the door that, leads you to that end, which is Buddhahood, is bodhicitta. So, how incredible we're learning about something that few people in the whole universe are going to hear about, even in a lifetime. And we've been able to go over it again and again and again and again, and use logical analysis to see how it could produce the kind of results that we're talking about when we're talking about fearlessness, by getting rid of the origin of suffering through wisdom. And then because it's propelled by this mind that aspires to enlightenment, which is infinite love for everyone, that same wisdom that would just turn into just a freedom from suffering then becomes not only freedom from suffering, but infinite happiness and bliss, because it has as its object of observation, love and compassion has as its object of observation every sentient being in the universe, and that connectivity to every being, and the wish for every being to have happiness, the causes of happiness, and free from suffering and the causes of suffering, not only allows that type of being to be free from his or her own suffering, but also achieve the elimination of the obstructions to omniscience, which cause him or her to not be omniscient, which cause him or her to be omniscient. So once those obstructions to omniscience are removed, the being no longer has any hindrances to bliss and no hindrances to being able to be completely helpful to all sentient beings. Having the omniscient mind and the perfected wisdom, and then the perfected love and compassion, and then perfected powers. So we have tonight the recipe that will allow us to achieve that complete state of Buddhahood, that there is no higher perfection than. And what a great way to look through the lens that the great scholars look at it through. And all the monks at Drepung Losang Ling and all the monks at Ganden Shartse look at bodhicitta through the lens of Panchen Sonandrapa's general meaning of perfection, and then some obviously other texts as well. So we had the just wonderful, wonderful opportunity to receive these teachings from Khenso Geshe Wandak so many times, and then now I have such a wonderful opportunity to receive more of them from Geshe Aga, who's in Drepung Losang Ling, who's the chanting master, the Umzela, and such a great scholar. And he gives me time anytime that I ask for it to help me explain this text and other texts just by hitting, WhatsApp call. So I just want to say I'm so blessed and so grateful for Geshe Aga, the Drepung Losang Ling Umze, for continuing to teach me, and other teachers like Geshe Dorje Damdu for continuing to teach me, and Geshe Mala Tenzin Ladrinla, who was in the first class of women to receive the same exact Geshe degree as everyone else, for her support and help in connecting me with Geshe Dorje Damdu and so forth. So I feel so fortunate to be able to continue my education and be able to share that education with you. And so let's get started. Let's do what we always do for the purpose of really recognizing why we're here and getting into a virtuous mindset and so forth. So let's get into a posture that we've gotten into many times before, with the 7-point Vairakana posture, where we put our legs into a cross-legged position, preferably the Vajra posture, the full lotus position, but a half lotus or just legs crossed or legs flat on the floor is fine. Whatever your physical ability is, you don't go beyond your, if you have limitations, don't try to push it so you're going to hurt yourself. So you put your legs into a cross-legged fashion, put your right hand on your left with your thumbs touching and your lap comfortably. And now you're back straight. Imagine that your vertebrae is like a stack of coins. You don't want it arched. We have a tendency to think back straight is arched. Back straight is not arched. A vertebrae, a stack of coins does not go like this. A stack of coins is straight up and down. So we have our back completely straight. Vertebrae, thinking of it like a stack of coins, going just straight all the way up, keeping that posture. Now we put our shoulders into a comfortable position. So that it allows for our arms to somewhat bow out, our head slightly tilted forward, not like this. And, we don't want it back. We want it just slightly tilted forward. And then our eyes slightly open, pointed at our nose. We don't want them open completely because that's a distraction, right? We're going to see everything around us. If we have them closed, it's going to give us the, kind of thought, oh, maybe it's time to go to sleep. And meditation isn't about just, spacing out. Meditation is about getting very clear so that you become like a laser. So meditation isn't a spacey place. Meditation is a super clear place. So we want to be able to get to that. And the best way that we can do it is by a happy meeting of having our eyes slightly open at a 45-degree angle. And that will allow us, once we become more advanced in meditation, to kind of make that disappear altogether and just focus on internal objects. So that's number 6. And then we put our mouth in a comfortable position with our tongue kind of on the roof, kind of a mouth kind of against our teeth. And just rest your mouth comfortably. This allows for the saliva to flow. It allows for it not to fill up too much and your mouth not to dry out, because then you'll add an 8th step of breathing through the nose. So you put your legs, your right on your hand on your left with your thumb touching, vertebrae straight, shoulders comfortable, head slightly forward, eyes slightly open, pointed at the nose, mouth in a comfortable position with the tongue on the roof of the mouth against the teeth. And now begin to breathe in and out through your nose, breathing in all the way to the top of the breath, filling your diaphragm. So when you actually inhale, your stomach will go out once you fill your diaphragm completely. So you're going to breathe in, fill it all the way. Now, don't breathe in real quickly like you're taking some, big, quick, deep breath. Don't go too slowly, like you feel like you're drowning. Just breathe in very, very comfortably in all the way to the top, filling it, and then breathe out. And just focus on that breathing in and out of the breath. And as you exhale, count 1. So you're breathing in all the way to the top. 1, exhaling. So continue that pattern. And the point of this is we're trying to rein our minds in. We're trying to tell our minds what to do. We come in here with all kinds of distraction. We're attached to things that we think we need so badly. And there's these things that we dislike, and we just dislike them so much. We want to tell everyone how much we dislike them. And it causes so much disturbance in our mind, and our mind just to go around like a hamster on a wheel. So the purpose of this is to start training us, because we train ourselves to be busy. We train ourselves to be distracted all of the time. We meditate on the, attachment, things we're attached to. We think about them over and over again all the time, or the things we hate over and over again all the time. So what we're trying to do is tell our mind we're not going to be distracted. We're going to only focus on the breath. We're only going to focus on, after we start to get comfortable with the breath, the object of observation of the photo you should all see of Buddha Shakyamuni. It should be a good size, actually, too. The Tibet house in New Delhi, Geshe Dorje Damdu, went through a lot of effort to make this image because he felt it was the best image to get, as a universal image, to get this kind of single pointed concentration that we're trying to get. And it's from Bodh Gaya, the statue in Bodh Gaya. It's very, very beautiful and symmetric. And it's just an example of what we could use as an object of observation when we think of Buddha Shakyamuni. So we're going to be breathing in and out, not to complicate things first. So we're breathing in and out, and we're exhaling, we're counting. And we're making sure that each time we get to the exhale, we're counting, because we know then we're looking at our breath. We're making sure where our mindfulness is saying, okay, we're focused on the breath. Then we have introspection, which is a spy in our mind saying, are you focusing on the breath? So it's this thing in the corner of our mind that's seeing if we're suddenly, focusing on something that isn't the breath. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're just trying to keep our eye on our minds and trying to focus only on the breath. And so we're going to do that for as many rounds of breaths as we get to, or if our mind is totally calm, at that point, if we're advanced, we can just start to imagine the image of Buddha Shakyamuni. So I'll guide everyone through the kind of process, but if you are not new, you know what that process is. So feel free to do that. And if you are new and you use an object of observation other than Buddha Shakyamuni when you're doing single pointed concentration, feel free to use that object of observation, because we're going to add an object of observation and a front generation, which will be Buddha Shakyamuni, to the actual breathing exercise. But if you use another object of observation, feel free to use that. This is just a suggestion, as is everything, right? There are no steadfast rules. These are all just suggestions if we want to choose to use these kind of tools. Okay, so we'll get into that 7-point Vairocana posture and begin breathing in and out. Now, as we're breathing in and out and counting the breath, we add the image of Buddha Shakyamuni in the space in front of us. You see the image on your screen. If you're not familiar with Buddha Shakyamuni, those of you who aren't on Zoom won't see the image of Buddha Shakyamuni, but you can look it up if you don't know what he looks like. Or if you're on another app, you can get in touch with me and I'll send you the image. So imagine Buddha Shakyamuni 2 feet in front of you, about 2 inches tall, eye height, imagining with your mind, not with your eye consciousness, not with your vision. You're imagining in your mind, this image of Buddha Shakyamuni. You're breathing in and out, and you're focused only on this image. Beautiful and radiant, a light body, 3-dimensional, not with blood, bones, and guts, just a pure body of pure love, light, wisdom. So amazing that we can take a moment out of our lives to think of a being who has immeasurable love and compassion for all sentient beings, who has perfected wisdom, who works day and night for the sake of others. The most wonderful kind of being in the universe we've been able to focus on for a minute. We think about what makes the Buddha the most wonderful being in the universe. We think about why we came to Buddhism, why we came to a class, maybe some kind of pain or suffering or dissatisfaction, kind of an answer for life. And we begin to look at what the Buddha taught. The Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of suffering. So we begin to think of our own personal sufferings. It's important that we really, really use ourselves as the example when we think about these, so that we can just reinforce in our minds that we have this suffering. So think about the suffering of birth, aging. As we get older and older and older, it becomes more and more difficult. There's no stopping it. Every moment we're getting older. Suddenly we look in the mirror and our hair is white, but that was coming. Every moment it had been turning white. We have to experience sickness. All the different kinds of sickness and diseases you think of in the world. We may be diagnosed with many of them tomorrow. None of us will escape death. Death will come, nothing can stop it, we don't know when. The only thing we carry forward are the positive and negative things that we've engaged in. Think about all of the unpleasant things we've met with. All of the pleasant things that we liked so much that were ripped from us for some reason or another. Things we wanted that we didn't get. We wanted them, but for some reason we just didn't get it. Think about this body and mind that we have. It serves as a basis of such suffering. We go through such mental anguish sometimes, and anxiety and depression, because we have a mind with afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience. We have a body that has to endure sickness. We eventually die because the body dies. The consciousness moves forward into another thing that will eventually end. And this will happen over and over again. There'll be no certainty in any of our existences. The person that I'm closest to in this life that I couldn't live without, I may never know again until I'm a Buddha, and my greatest enemy may become my closest loved one in my future life. There's no certainty. There's no satisfaction. I take these rebirths on over and over again. I shuck off bodies. Sometimes I'm in a high status. Sometimes I'm in a low status. And there's no one who will go with me. The moment my life's severed, I'm alone again. There's no one, even people crying all around me at the time of my death. There's no one when that life is severed that can help me. The only thing I carry with me are my positive and negative karmas, actions that I've done. And because of the thing that the Buddha labeled the true suffering of the First Noble Truth is the pervasive compounded suffering, I will have to endure this again and again, again and again, because of my ignorance, because of my afflictions and karma, contaminated karma. I will have to endure this again and again and again and again and again. Thrust into bodies, no control, thinking it's the only one, and then it dies, and then thrust into another one and thinking it's the only one. Having so much fondness for this impermanent thing that's disintegrating moment by moment, this thing that you can't even find if you look for it in a moment. All results have causes. Suffering is a result because it's impermanent. Anything impermanent has a cause and is a result. So the Buddha stated that the cause of all of our suffering is ignorance that grasps at the I as being truly established, grasps at phenomena as being truly established, and in dependence upon this misapprehension of everything around me, I have an inappropriate kind of attention that takes place in my mind. And then afflictions arise, attachment, hatred, ignorance arises. And then in dependence upon that, I engage in contaminated actions, contaminated karmas. And through that, I suffer because all results are dependent upon their causes. My suffering is caused by my non-virtuous actions that I previously committed. My non-virtuous actions are caused by the afflictions that arise in my mind, which are caused by my inappropriate mindset that's caused by my ignorance that grasps at the I and phenomena as being truly established. And the Buddha stated that this is what causes all of your suffering, and then said, because suffering is a result, when you remove the cause, there's an absence of it. So the Buddha stated that this absence, the potential for the absence of suffering, is the superior truth of suffering. And this was such good news. The Buddha said that, all of this can end. And the Buddha said that the way that can end is by relying on a path of wisdom that I realized would end ignorance. And if you end the cause of something, then it ends. And the Buddha said, that's how I did it. I realized the nature of reality, how things truly are. And in dependence upon realizing this, I was able to get rid of what causes all suffering and able to be free from suffering completely. And you can do the same, because I am someone who became transformed into a reliable guide. I'm not someone who is automatically one. I'm someone who had to practice a path, someone who is just exactly like you, with a mental consciousness that could mature, and a mental consciousness that's empty. And your emptiness of your mental consciousness and my emptiness of my mental consciousness are precisely the same. So you can do exactly what I've done. I'm not some special being that can't be achieved. I'm exactly what everyone will achieve, independence upon this. So we become so happy. And then the Buddha says just one more thing: you can be free from suffering altogether. You can achieve a complete fearlessness in your life, and a nirvana for yourself alone. You can achieve this through what I'm saying, and right now alone, by just this wisdom, this desire to emerge from all of these sufferings, and then a wisdom that would end it. You can do that, but that won't complete all that you can be. The Buddha said, if you want to be able to have infinite happiness alongside a freedom from suffering, like a bliss, and you want to be able to be the most reliable guide for everyone, then you have to practice a path which cherishes others, a path which will end up with infinite love and compassion for everyone. So the Buddha said, start to think about different types of beings, and you'll be on your way. So the Buddha said, think about your friends and how they have to experience all of these sufferings that you just personally thought about so clearly, all the pain that you've had in your life. You think about your closest loved ones, your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your partner. You think of everyone, your best friends that you care about so much, and you think about them experiencing the kind of sufferings that you were just thinking about, and they will have to. They'll be thrust into more bodies, and you won't be there for them, and they won't be there for you. And everyone will be all alone, and it's so sad, right? And how could we unite? How could everyone be together again, right? So we think about this suffering that all of our friends have to go through. We think about strangers and how all of those strangers will have to experience these sufferings too. The birds that fly by us might have, been anyone to us in our previous life, and we see them just as a bird flying by us. They may have been our mother in our last life. We see the worms and we think of them as strangers, but we could have been so connected to them at a very intimate level and not even known it 3 lifetimes ago. So we start to think about all of these beings and having to endure these sufferings. And then we think about these beings we label as enemy. And we recognize that this label of enemy isn't a realistic label. Since beginningless time, we've had this consciousness, and we've had all kinds of relationships with every single sentient being. Every single sentient being has taken care of us in our most vulnerable state when we needed their help so badly. And at this moment in time, I now label that person as my enemy because maybe they've said something I didn't like, or I feel that they've harmed me in some way. But why was I having to have this happen to me? When I think about beginningless time, and I think about karma, and I think about results, the reason that this person is doing this to me seemingly is because I have the karma to be able to experience that. I've done something negative to harm somebody in the past to receive such a harm. Past lives, right? We're mostly talking about to be able to receive such harm. And so that is this situation's out of control from my side. I don't have any choice but to experience it. It's ripening right now. So it's ripening because of something negative that I did. And from their side, they're out of control because they're under the control of their previous karma and so forth. And they have some sort of habituation with some sort of negativity that they're carrying out. And now because I've become their object, because of something that I did negatively, now they're in the future going to have to experience suffering. So I'm actually harming them, and I call them my enemy because I think they're harming me. And they're participating in it because I've created the cause for them to. And previously they were so kind to me. I labeled them my best friend. And now if my closest person to me in my life suddenly became out of control, I would seek medical attention. I'd try to get them help. I wouldn't label them my enemy. And we have to look at all sentient beings who we are starting to, have kind of aversion or anger towards. Look at what's really going on when that circumstance is happening. And we can say that that labeled enemy doesn't even make sense, because we've even seen in this life, our friends become enemies, enemies become friends, strangers become friends, strangers become enemies. All these things shift around and around and around. And at the moment that it's occurring, we feel it's so solid. But at that moment that we are feeling that this label is so solid, it's momentarily changing. And every moment it's moving towards separation in one way or another. Either we're going to be separated and that friend will become an enemy, that friend, could become a stranger, we forget about them, our enemy may become our friend, and an enemy we may forget about. So there's this momentary impermanence that's happening, and then it all severs at the end of our life. Our friends will become nothing, our enemies will become nothing, I will become nothing, I will become something else. So these labels that we put on aren't realistic. So we think about all of these types of being want to have happiness. They all have this in common. The pain they feel feels painful like when we feel it. When they're happy, it feels good when we feel it. So, we start to recognize that all of these types of beings really, really, really have this commonality with us. And we say, oh my gosh, how nice it would be if all sentient beings had happiness and the causes of happiness. May they have happiness and the causes of happiness. I'll be a cause for them to have happiness and the causes of happiness. May the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas please bless me to be able to have the strength to be able to carry this out. So then we think, oh, this is such a wonderful, wonderful thing. And we generate this love for all sentient beings. And we take all these labels away and we just call all sentient beings, beings that we see as lovable. Then we say how nice it would be if all these beings could be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May I be a cause for them to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas please bless me to be able to have the strength and ability to carry that out. So then we think, oh my gosh, I will take it upon myself. This task. I now have this kind of strength. I have this courage. I'll take on myself the task of freeing every sentient being from suffering and bringing them all to a state of happiness. We have this courage. We say, I can be free. I'm going to get them all free. I know how to do it. And then we get realistic with ourselves. We generate this kind of altruistic intention, but we know we can't carry it out. We know that we, like all sentient beings, are in a state of suffering. It would be like if two people had broken all bones in their bodies. And instead of yelling for help, they whispered in each other's ear, please give me a lift up, help me stand up. It wouldn't really make sense. And I, like all sentient beings, are in a pit of cyclic existence. I'm in the jail of cyclic existence. And only the one with the key can open it, because if I'm inside and I don't have the key, I can't open that for others. So we recognize that there's only one being who truly has the capacity to be of utmost benefit to others. It would be a being who's omniscient and a being who has complete loving and compassion for everyone and the power to help them. And we find through our earlier studies that we've done and through our analysis of refuge and the most reliable guide that it is Buddha. We recognize that Buddha has abandoned all negative qualities and has gained all excellent qualities. And we say that we must become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So this is a meditation where we arrive at this concept of bodhicitta. I must become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, so I can have complete fearlessness, so I can have freedom from all suffering myself, so I can have infinite happiness and bliss that comes from cherishing others. We know that, recently my neighbor had a baby, and he said, I've never felt so much happiness, never felt so much love than seeing my newborn girl, right, for the first time. So that love is so powerful that it created this happiness in his mind. Imagine if you could multiply that feeling times every single being simultaneously. And that's the bliss that the Buddha feels. And that's the bliss that you will feel when you become a Buddha. And you will feel more and more bliss, the less and less hatred you have, and the more and more beings that you care for. Because you see in that the empirical world gives us all the examples we need. We don't need to search into some mysterious land. We can see that when we love someone, that feeling of that love is so powerful and so blissful. Just imagine if you could double it, triple it, quadruple it, and make it infinite. So it's just logic. So may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. May I become the most reliable guide. May I listen to all of these teachings to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. May I recite the Heart Sutra and meditate on the implicit and explicit meanings of the Heart Sutra for the sake of all sentient beings. May I understand the 5 paths that are presented within the Heart Sutra: path of accumulation, the path of preparation, the path of seeing, meditation, and no more learning, and traverse them to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. May I understand the emptiness of all phenomena and what that means, the emptiness of objective reality, to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So we think about this over and over again. Everything that we're doing this evening is to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. When we leave from this class, everything that we do should be to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And that's what a Bodhisattva is. It's a being who is only operating in that way for everyone else. And this is just an amazing realization. I can't imagine if I could have such a realization. So we're doing all this to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So now imagine that in the space in front of us, all the holy beings you can imagine are there. Whoever are holy beings to you. I imagine Khenso Geshe Wandak, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas you can imagine in the space in front of you, all the beings in the profound view lineage and the extensive deeds lineage and the lineage of blessings. Just imagine all these holy beings, Maitreya and Manjushri and Tullo and Naro and Asanga and Nagarjuna, imagining them, all these great holy beings, Chandrakirti, Buddhapalita, Chandrashita, all these beings, and Baba Vega and Dignaga and Dharmakirti, and so forth. Just imagining them all, and excuse me, Vasubandhu, and imagining Lord Atisha and Lama Tsongkhapa and the Kadampa masters. So just imagining all these holy beings and all the deities, the highest yoga tantra, yogic tantra, performance tantra, and action tantra, imagining the 35 Buddhas, imagining all the protector deities. Just imagine every holy being is in the space in front of you. And now imagine that all sentient beings are assembling around you. You can imagine that you emanate infinite arms and bring them all here. Imagining that you're bringing all sentient beings here and they're assembled all around you. Okay, and they're all around you. And imagine that you're leading them in this recitation that we're about to do. Imagine that what you're thinking about these prayers, they're thinking about these prayers. And now you imagine that all the gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are so happy. They're so full of bliss because they see you and all sentient beings finally all at the same time doing the only thing that they care about. And that is creating the causes for you to have bliss and for you to have freedom from suffering. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas don't need anything else from you but you to practice so that you don't have to suffer and you can have infinite happiness. That's all they care about. That's all Khenso Geshe Wandak ever cared about. So you imagine that now, because they see all sentient beings together doing the only thing that they want them doing, just an immense amount of bliss goes over all these holy beings. And imagine that all yourself and all sentient beings around you have syllables like letters, a white Om on your top of your head that symbolizes your body, a red Ah at your throat, and all sentient beings have this, right, that you're visualizing. It symbolizes your speech, and a blue Hum at your heart that symbolizes your mind. So Om, Ah, Hum, white, red, blue. Imagine you and all sentient beings have these seed syllables. And now imagine that from the bliss that all these holy beings are experiencing, light rays and nectars are emanating and transforming into these syllables. So white light rays and nectars are kind of showering down on us and all sentient beings and turning into seed syllable Oms and going into all of our crowns, right? To where we have the Om, and we imagine that it's purifying all negativities of our body. And we imagine that the light rays and nectars from this bliss are red and transforming into Ahs, going to our throat and all sentient beings' throats, and purifying all negativities of our speech. Now imagine the same light rays and nectars and blue turning into hum syllables, going to our hearts and all sentient beings' hearts, and transforming our negative minds into pure minds. So you imagine that this kind of is occurring, and that we're wishing for this transformation. We're here tonight to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. In order to become a Buddha for the sake of sentient beings, we have to purify our body, speech, and mind. So we're just imagining this is happening, just leaving imprints in our mind for this purification to later takes place. So as we're imagining this visualization of this wonderful, they say sometimes it's like a blizzard of om, ah, hum. Just imagine there's a blizzard happening of these seed syllables and just purifying your body, speech, and mind over and over again. As you're imagining this happen, we will recite the Heart Sutra, the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha monks and a great gathering of the Sangha bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way, saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness is also its form. Emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Deyata Om Gate Gate Bharagade Bharazangade Bodhisattva Om Gade Gade 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 Bharagade Bharazangade Bodhisattva. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family. Thus it is, O son of noble family. Thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Ngala nyume ne jodon ba ne nguje duju nga yi dudu jen ruba bolo ma yi bujin zi nizon gandra do la jate lo ga zamara de jandara zamara ve. Aga samara janda rasamara vete ata onga te gati paragati parasangati buddhiso papa gonchu sanchi kai tembe doji she lobo doji shni bo doji shiwa doji ragi baje medo meje danje je den gori so gerin don da je je wa da me don no be jan dan de wa dan don ba don jin bon zong zong jo ji da shi de jan den da de le jo. We'll make a mandala offering. This hand gesture, for anyone who's new, is symbolic of offering a perfect universe, just the most wonderful universe, as a request for the teaching to all the great, great beings, all the way back to Lord Buddha, that made this possible. My teacher's 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 teacher, we can find ends up at Buddha Shakyamuni in an unbroken lineage. So we're making an offering of a perfect universe to say, please offer this teaching that we know is so precious. So we're offering the most precious thing we possibly can, a perfect universe. Fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. Na yi mu ye yu ye me do zhang ri ra li ni ni ye dian ba di zang ye yin de mi jie o a ye zhuo gong nan da yi la yu ba zhuo Jie zun lama dang ba ni na jie ju ju ga la jian zi jun zin ji jie da zang bei du jie zin ma la la jie ju ji jia ba ba du lo. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Idang Guru Radha Mandala Gamni Radhayami. Sanje janan zaji janan la janju badu danye jasu ji dagi ji je ji be sanan ji drala benje sanje juba sho sanje janan zaji janan la janju badu danye jasu ji dagi ji je ji be sanan ji drala benje sanje juba sho sanje janan zaji janan la janju badu danye jasu ji dagi ji je ji be sanan ji drala benje sanje juba sho. The one who is transformed into the reliable guide, motivated by altruism to benefit all sentient beings, the teacher, Sugata, and protector to you, I make prostrations. The one who has eliminated the web of conceptualizations and is endowed with the divine bodies of the vast and profound, who eternally shines forth a forever noble light rays, to you, the Buddha, I make prostrations. Inspired by wisdom and compassion today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind of full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. May this teaching be heard and understood in the language of all beings. Okay. So wonderful. We're here again. Everybody who's on has made it through since Sunday, or the last time that we saw all of you, and hasn't passed away. So we're among the fortunates, because so many sentient beings who thought they had another day, or thought that tomorrow would be a good day where I started changing my life, or maybe, becoming a better human being, they never made it to that day. And we all know so many examples of that. And it's, one of the pains of separation, one of the pains of death, that isn't just the pain of the experiencer, the person passing. We've experienced so much pain around death as an observer. And we can see that these people we knew thought they had so much more time, and suddenly they didn't. So it's fortunate that we're here this evening, and we're taking full advantage of the opportunity that we have, because we only know we have this opportunity at this very moment. We have this human life of leisure, where we have meaning we have the opportunity to practice Dharma. There aren't any real obstacles to us finding out what the truth about reality is, through our own investigative process, not through blind faith. We don't have any obstacles. We have this human basis that can think, right, and is intelligent enough to, and can read and can hear teachings. We don't have any obstacles to changing ourselves, to becoming better. And we have all of the inner conditions and outer conditions really that are necessary, that are so rare to have, And if we think about all of the 8 billion or however many human beings there are in the world, how many of them will hear about a pathway that's a logical pathway that can be cut and rubbed and kind of achieved and proven? How many of those sentient beings in the universe will be able to hear about such love and compassion and wisdom this evening? And we're so fortunate to be able to hear about it, and would be even more fortunate if we could apply these teachings and make them change us into the kind of beings that it is predicted we will become, beings who have infinite wisdom, beings who have infinite love and infinite compassion, because we're creating the causes for them. We aren't thinking we're like going to get something to fall out of space. I know we do these visualizations and so forth. This is just for acquaintance of our mind. We have to do the work. There's no one going to do it for us. There's no external being who's going to do the work for us. There would be no reason for them to have created some, you hear where I'm getting at, right? There would be a perfect being we wouldn't need to do work, because we would be created from perfection and be perfect. There's nothing external that can do the work for us. We can only transform our minds. External factors are limitless, right? Our response to them is controlled by our mind. It's all a subjective experience, and it's an internal job. And there's nothing external that's going to be able to change or shape us. It's something we have to do from our minds. And the only way we can start to mature our mind is to learn how to do it, is to put tools into our kind of toolbox to know how to fight this grasping itself that then makes us have self-centeredness, then makes us become attached to things and makes us hate things and makes us spend so much time in a place where we can't either get the thing that we want. So we're in this state of depression and anxiety, right? And then we get it and we move on to a next thing to give us that anxiety and depression that we want, we can't get, right? Or we hate something so much that we fight it and push it out of our lives. We call it stupid, right? And if it won't go away, then it causes this anxiety and depression in our minds, right? So we have these tendencies that happen, really from this grasping itself. And then it's reinforced by our self-centeredness, right? We discriminate ourselves as separate from you, and my happiness is more important than yours. And then let's go, right? And let's figure out how to achieve that goal. My happiness only, your happiness is secondary, and let's go, right? So we go about the world so incorrectly, and we look at everything so wrong. And this self-centered attitude that we think is always making us happy never, ever ends up making us happy. It just makes us, have to suffer more and more and more and more. So this teaching on bodhicitta that we're doing tonight is the teaching that is the only way that we can perfect the opposite of self-cherishing attitude, how we could become a perfect being who loves everyone perfectly and has compassion for everyone unbiased, in an unbiased fashion, perfectly, right? It would really, really take a process to get to that. So tonight we're learning about this mind that's called bodhicitta, the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And at first you have to realize your own suffering. You have to realize that, this is a problem. I have these various types of suffering. I have to experience them again and again. Even the things that I think are happiness end up turning into suffering in some way. They're kind of the bait that keeps me coming back for more, but they always end up, changing into something that's kind of a state of suffering. So I have to figure out a way to then, counteract this way of looking at the world incorrectly and arrive at, yes, I myself am experiencing this suffering and I'm out of control and I have a way out. And then it's from this realization that you start to look at others. You start to say, everyone else has these same things and I want to help them. How do I help them in the highest way possible? So that's where we are tonight. We're at a place where the author is assuming that we know everything about all the sufferings that we can experience. We definitely want to be out of all the sufferings. We want to achieve liberation. And we have this, complete desire to emerge. And now we want to help others. So Panchen Sonamdrapa's text, as we've gone over quite a few times now, but let's just keep going over it in such an intense fashion until we know that we just absolutely can become bodhisattvas and don't need to even look at a piece of paper to know how to do it. So it's so important. So Panchen Sonamdrapa's general meaning of perfection as an outline. So at first is the basis for bodhicitta. Second, we go for the causes of bodhicitta. Third, the nature, or kind of how do you define it? Fourth, what are the divisions of it? And number five, what's the benefit of it? And we've gone over the benefits of the mind that aspires to enlightenment. Obviously, we talk about it constantly of, getting this mind that, wants to, cherish others and wants to help others, and so forth, called bodhicitta. So we went over the first category, which is basis. What kind of physical, mental basis can you have, right, in order to generate the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So we, looked at it in terms of two kinds of bodhicitta. So I thought, it would be good to just kind of briefly go over them, just, for a moment, again, just so we know and understand them. Okay, so when we look at the physical base for achieving the mind that aspires to enlightenment, we look at the two kinds of bodhicitta: aspiring bodhicitta and engaged bodhicitta. So when we look at Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, it says, in brief, the awakening mind should be understood to be of two types: the mind that aspires to awaken, and then the mind that ventures to do so, as is understood by the distinction between aspiring to go somewhere and actually going. So the wise understand in two the distinction between these two. In Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, he says that there's these two kinds of bodhicitta: aspiring bodhicitta and engaged bodhicitta. So what does that mean? Kamalashila's middle stages of meditation sums it all up, really. It says aspiring bodhicitta happens when someone wants to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Their mind says, I want to do this. And then the engaged bodhicitta is when they actually move forward to do it by taking what's called the bodhisattva vow and practicing the six perfections of generosity, ethics, patience, patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom, in order to become a Buddha for the sake of everyone. So aspiring bodhicitta is this thought: I want to become a Buddha for the sake of sentient beings. Now, not just a thought once, a thought that never leaves your mind, right? It's that day and night you're only thinking about this. This is what a bodhisattva is. It's a being who day and night is thinking about how they can become the most reliable guide for others, how they can become the most helpful to every being in the universe. So once this mind is generated and doesn't go away, it's day and night, then this is aspiring bodhicitta. And then according to Kamalashila's stages of meditation, once that being takes the bodhisattva vow, then he or she has engaged bodhicitta. So I want to just go over that again briefly. So what kind of physical basis can you have to get aspiring bodhicitta? And we see that any among the six realms of cyclic existence, you can get this aspiring bodhicitta. And we find that in the animal realm, various examples of beings who are able to get this, and nagas who will be able to get this, and gods who are able to get this, and so forth. In Buddhism, there are gods that aren't God. They're just deities that are above us, higher than us, but they still have to be reborn again and maybe reborn as humans next, and even as an animal next. It's the cycle of existence. So who has the physical basis for the mind that aspires to enlightenment? We would say the beings in the six realms of cyclic existence. Who has the physical basis to get a bodhisattva vow? We see in Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, there's a statement that can mislead us that says who is a candidate for the bodhisattva vow, and it says any holder of any among the 7 types of individual liberation vows. And then, we see, particularly the fully ordained vow is the most appropriate. So what does that mean? Does that mean that other beings can't receive the bodhisattva vow? No, it doesn't. It just means that the most ideal basis is a human basis, a holder of some of the prada moksha vows or individual liberation vows. So we went over that. It's the most ideal basis, but there are beings in the form realm examples and so forth that are able to take this bodhisattva vow and think about this bodhisattva vow. So we see that the humans and above examples of beings who have a physical basis who can take this bodhisattva vow. Then mental basis. What is necessary to have aspiring bodhicitta or engaged bodhicitta. So aspiring bodhicitta, this mind that never stops thinking about becoming a Buddha for everyone's sake, and then engaged bodhicitta, this mind that's present that then takes a vow and becomes engaged and really taking care of others as a job, if you will. So what kind of mental basis is necessary? So we saw that in Panchen Sonandrapa's general meaning of perfection, there were various bases that would help for that to occur. So first, the mental base that would need to be present. What would the fertile ground need to be in order for this mind to aspire? So first, faith which observes or is focused on the Buddha or the conqueror. Well, it makes sense, right? If you want to become a Buddha, if your goal is to become a Buddha, you should know what the Buddha is. Faith, not a blind faith, knowing that the Buddha is the most reliable guide, and that's why you want to become the Buddha, knowing that the Buddha has abandoned all negativities and has all excellent qualities. That's why you would want to become a Buddha. That's why you would take refuge in a Buddha who could show you how to become the being you want to become. Someone who hasn't achieved perfection can't show you how to achieve perfection. So you have this faith which observes the conqueror based on logic, reasoning, studying what a Buddha is, not blind faith, understanding what the Dharmakaya, the truth body of the Buddha is, and the Sambhogakaya, the enjoyment body of the Buddha is, and the Nirmanakaya, the emanation body of the Buddha is, and why that's helpful, and what are the excellent qualities of the Buddha's body, speech, mind, enlightened activities. So this is not an uneducated kind of going for refuge or wanting to become a Buddha. This is a very educated position you're coming from. Instagram's probably going to go off in like 4 minutes. I'll restart it once that happens. But if you go on our Facebook page, Tara Mantra, it's on live right now in continuous and won't stop, but I will lean forward and restart the Instagram. So just hang tight. It'll come back on once it stops. So the first mental base you would need to get this aspiring bodhicitta would be this faith, this kind of basis that knows what the Buddha is, right? Duh. Compassion, which is focused on sentient beings. You would need to care about others, right? If you wanted to become a Buddha for others' sake, you would have to have compassion. You would want them to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. You would have to have generated great compassion to arrive at a place where you would see others' needs as so important. And then it says a perseverance that's willing to endure hardship. If you're going to work for other sentient beings, they can be hard to work for. Sentient beings, like I've heard a great scholar say, can be kind of annoying, right? And can cause you hardship. And if you're going to try to help everyone, it's going to be a rough road. And you have to be willing to have gotten to a place where you have such compassion for everyone, you're willing to do whatever it takes, right? As a being of higher capacity to be able to help everyone. And then just a general faith in a lot of the different points, right? You have to have faith that there are previous lives and future lives, right? To even establish that there could be such a thing as a Buddha. So you have to have this general overview in your mind as a foundation for the arisal of this beautiful mind called bodhicitta. It's not magic. It's not going to happen because I just said some words or chanted some things in Tibetan tonight. It happens through proliferation, through maturing your mind, through looking at the downfalls of cherishing yourself, looking at the benefits of cherishing others, and so forth. So we're going to get into that. So this is the basis that would be needed for the aspiring bodhicitta of your mind. So your physical basis, like all the 6 realms of beings can get it, right? And the physical basis, so I'm in that, I can. And then the mental basis, if I want to get bodhicitta, my mind's going to have these things in it. So that's where we landed with that. And then how do I then what's my mind state have to be to get the bodhisattva vow and have this engaged bodhicitta? Well, you just need what was just mentioned, right? You need the prerequisite of all the conditions for the aspiring mind. Then you need the aspiring mind to be present. and it's called the path of accumulation technically. And once that aspiring mind's present, where you want to become a Buddha for the sake of sentient beings, then you just take a vow and you become an engaged bodhisattva. You have engaged bodhicitta. Those are the basis section, the first section of Panchen Sonandrapa's general meaning of perfection. And I assure you, if you check all Mahayana Buddhists and go around and question them, you will not find, the majority that will be able to decipher these things about bodhicitta. So it's not because I'm giving I have some special wisdom. It's because my teacher had special wisdom and his teacher had special wisdom and weren't satisfied with just little instructions and little things that we could have some blind faith that would go away tomorrow with. My teacher and his teachers were real interested in pounding logic into our minds that became incontrovertible and inarguable, so that wasn't blind faith, and you could just then really, really practice this. And I've done this for 25 years. And many of you know I've gone through ups and downs, but one thing that never went up and down was my practice of Buddhism. And it's the one thing that's allowed me to keep kind of sense of everything in my world and around me, and to be able to move forward and become a better human being year after year after year. Hopefully. Hold on. Okay, so once this I think has to post, and then we can go live again. So this is the reason that we're going through all of these stages, is to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So we have the basis of physicality we need, and the mental basis we have to proliferate, we have to mature into. And we see compassion. Compassion is one of the steps of the 7-point cause and effect for realizing bodhicitta. So we see how we're being brought through all of this through that understanding. Let's see if I can just do it. Okay, here we are back. All right, so now when we look at the second category, we have causes. So we went over those causes in great detail. We went over general causes. So we'll just read through them real quickly. Awakening the lineage of the great vehicle, being taken care of by a spiritual guide, the cause being which is under the influence of love and compassion, being able to endure the hardship for others, the conditions of seeing the inconceivable power of the bodhisattva, repeatedly hearing the scriptural basket of the bodhisattva, not being able to bear the decline of the great vehicle teachings, and then seeing the rarity of the mind generation during these degenerate times. And then the power through one's own power, the power of others, power of meditation, and power of application. So we went over those general causes, conditions, and powers, and then we arrived at the real root causes for generating the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So we went over the 7-point cause and effect instruction for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So let's just go through it, really, really quickly, just to make sure that we're all familiar with it. I think that we probably are after all of these years with Rinpoche, but it never, ever, ever hurts to go over these things time and time again. And even the million times I've gone over them, I still like to keep a frame of reference around, because our minds sometimes are kind of like leaky pots, right? So it's important that we don't take for granted and say, oh, I know this, right? It's always important to keep a book handy to make sure if we need that quick frame of reference, we have it. So the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. We begin with the precept of equanimity, where we realize our friends, enemies, and neutrals would all be beings we should equally want to benefit. We start with our neutrals, then we move to our friends, and move on to our enemies. And we see how with our neutrals, we kind of discard them, our reaction in our mind. And as we think of our friends, we become attached to them. And when we think of our enemies, we really, really push them away, not discard them, push them away. So it's important for us to understand that. Very interesting. The computer is driving itself right now, by the way. So I don't know what that means. Oh, wow. Stop driving itself. Okay. Very strange. So we recognize this first precept. We recognize that all sentient beings we would equally want to benefit. So we meditate. We see that in the Nagarjuna's letter to a friend, I wanted to bring this quote. We can't say, because since beginningless time, we've had all of these relationships with all these different sentient beings, right? They've been our friends have been our enemies, right? And our enemies have been our friends, strangers have been both, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Nagarjuna's letter to a friend says one's father becomes one's son, one's mother becomes one's wife, the person whom was an enemy becomes a beloved friend. Thus, there is no certainty in cyclic existence. And then we see the observation that Shariputra makes when he sees, this kind of event going on in front of him, where there's someone eating a fish, and a dog comes up to take the fish away, right from the person who's eating the fish. And then his wife has a baby on her lap. And Shariputra is able to see the previous lives of these beings and says, well, the fish that he's eating is the flesh of his father who's passed away. And his father was reborn as a fish. And now he has a karmic connection with his father. And for whatever reason now, he has caught this fish and he's eating his father, right? This dog that runs up to try to steal the fish away, that he takes a stick and starts beating, was his mother in his previous life. And then he looks over at his wife and sees this beautiful baby on her lap. And this is actually, I think, a previous lover that she had that he killed. That was now born because of his attachment to her, right, as her baby. And Shariputra says, it's just how grotesque the nature of cyclic existence is, and how wrong it is to become so attached to friends, enemies, and neutrals, because we see just how things really are. So we know since beginningless time, all sentient beings have had all of these relationships with us, and all sentient beings have been so kind to us and taken care of us in our most dearest and most troubling state. So we would equally be able to benefit all of them. We're trying to just get to a neutral place. Then we think that all sentient beings have been our mothers. We think about since beginningless time, every sentient being we've had these relationships with, every sentient being is our mother. Because our continuum is continuous, it's just that we've forgotten about it because we don't remember this mind right now is very, very weak. It can't look big. It can't see where we were, even like when we were like 2 years old, let alone our last life, right? We think, oh, well, that last life didn't exist. Well, did one exist? I don't remember when I was in a crib. I mean, some people say they do. I don't. Like, so did that not exist? So just because I have a bad memory, nothing existed if I can't remember it, right? So we start to investigate that, and we see that since beginningless time, we've had all these relationships with sentient beings and so forth. So we look at it in that respect. And we see that every sentient being has been our mother. Then we remember the kindness they've shown us, that in our most vulnerable time, they've nursed us, they've birthed us, they did everything that they could for us. They put our needs before theirs, and we think about the kindness they've shown us. And then we think we wish to repay their kindness, and we think, oh, we would really, really want to give them a freedom from suffering and like happiness. What could we give them that would really satisfy them? What could we do for them? How could we repay something that was just like, they took care of us in our most vulnerable state? Like, what could we do? What could we do to help these beings? Like, how could we really help them? And then we begin to think that they're lovable beings, right? Because we've generated this idea about them, and it's about everyone, every sentient being there is. They're so lovable to us now because we've meditated in this way, and we love them. So then we wish that they have happiness and the causes of happiness, right? We have this love through this force of attraction that we generate, this seeing these beings as lovable, that then makes us want them to have happiness and the causes of happiness. And because we see them as lovable, we don't want them to have suffering and the causes of suffering. So then that next step is that we generate great compassion. All these things come from one another. From the equanimity arises the recognition that sentient beings are our mother, then the recognition that they were kind, the recognition we want to repay their kindness, then the recognition that they're lovable and we want them to have happiness, and then the recognition that those lovable beings we want to have happiness, we want to have freedom from suffering. And then we say we really, really are going to take on ourselves the task of doing this and recognize we can't and must become a Buddha. So that's the 7-point cause and effect that really serves as a foundation for the next practice, which is the equalizing, exchanging self with others practice that is taught. Because the equalizing, exchanging self with others practice is generally taught for sharp bodhisattvas. It's considered that, right? It was more of a secret teaching. It was really considered for beings who had an understanding and a working relationship with emptiness. And so people were careful with the passing down of it, because everyone's careful with passing down the teachings on emptiness, and the teachings on emptiness are in the equalizing, exchanging self with others practice. So amazing, right? We get to hear this teaching. Khensa Rinpoche thought we were suitable vessels to be able to hear such a teaching on equalizing and exchanging self with others that he taught us. So how amazing that we'll be able to hear this next step, that the 7-point cause and effect will really enhance if we realize it very well. In equalizing, exchanging self with others, we said that there were going to be 9 steps. So the 7-point cause and effect is 6 causes, 1 result, 7. So these 9 steps are 8 causes, 1 result. So we recognize that when we look at the equalizing, exchanging self with others practice, we start with this equalization of self and others. We recognize that all sentient beings are equally important as we are. Why are they equally important? All beings want happiness and don't want suffering. And when we look at Shantideva's compendium of trainings, it really gets into that more subtle point. And I wanted to read that tonight, this kind of subtle point. So there's this equality between self and others, right? We say, well, I am posited in relation to other, okay? So I am not truly established. There is no truly established self or I, just like there is no truly established other. The other that's standing there thinks of themselves as self, independence upon the other of I, and so forth. So Shantideva makes this point in the compendium of trainings, and this is a very, very subtle point about this subjective conventional existence and the non-ultimate existence of this duality of self and other. So we see the acquaintance with the equality of self and other. This is from Shantideva's compendium of trainings, the Siksa Samuchaya. Acquaintance with the equality of self and other will make the mind of enlightenment stable. Self and other are dependent upon one another, and thus are false, like here and there. So these labels, self and other, are false. When we look at their true nature, there is no inherently existent self, because I am other labeled at other times. Just like in reference to another perspective, it will be here, and thus are false, like here, here, and there. One side is not there in itself. In reference to another perspective, it will be here. And as the self is not that in its own right, with reference to something else, it is other, right? So we see this equality of self and other in terms of the lack of true establishment in the interdependence upon the designation. I can designate myself by seeing other than myself. So we see that none of these things have any inherent existence as self or other, because they can be labeled as either. And I can be other, and I can be self, and I don't have any inherent existence as that. So we see that as a part of an equalization. All sentient beings have Buddha nature. All sentient beings are the most important being in the world, right? Because they can become a Buddha. And that's the most important being in the world, and everyone has that same potential to become a Buddha. So we start to recognize that every sentient being is as important as I am, right? Through this logic. And we reflect on the downfalls of cherishing ourselves. We reflect on the good qualities of cherishing others. And then we begin to do this exchange of self and others, where we take on the suffering of others, and we imagine that we give them all of our happiness and root virtues. So we went through that very, very clearly. And then we have the special recollection that goes on of this need. And then we actually exchange the self with other. So we actually, after we take on their suffering, give happiness, we say, I will put others' needs before my own. And then we remember how kind they are. We have this special memory of how kind they are. And it's much deeper than remembering their kindness in the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, because at this remembering of the kindness is looking at the interdependence that we have with every single sentient being, in terms of every item that we use is dependent upon others. And in order for us to have this house and the wood that makes the house and everything around us, requires an incredible number of sentient beings to have been involved in that. So we see the interdependence and the kindness of all sentient beings. And then we develop this altruism, which is desire to take on the task of freeing each and every one of them. And then this rises into bodhicitta. So I hope that everybody now is kind of up to speed, right? And almost with their eyes closed, like Geshe Dorje Damdu says, tips of your fingers, like in the dark, no problem. You could meditate on these steps, or at least the framework of these steps, so you can begin to start, crushing down that self-cherishing attitude that's in our mind. We just have this grasping at self that happens, and then we cherish ourselves. We become so impressed with this self that we grasp at, that has no inherent existence. It's not even findable when we search for it in terms of reality. So we have to just do this over and over again and go through these steps of meditation over and over again. And if we look at the steps of meditation that we're able to do twice a week, I keep almost thinking like, oh, maybe we'll pump the brakes on the visualization at the beginning of class because it's always the same. But this is something that we all need to do in order to get bodhicitta, in order to realize these things. We have to meditate over and over and over again. Rinpoche was never bored with saying the same thing over and over again. Rinpoche said, I understand that there are beings of three capacities, small, medium, and great. I'll show right clearly to identify their characteristics 1,000,000 times, and talked about, through non-virtue comes suffering. Through virtue comes happiness. These are the 10 non-virtues, the ethics which abandons the 10 non-virtues. Rinpoche repeated this stuff over and over and over again. And I think it was a decade into Buddhism. And, I was thinking about the ethics that abandon the 10 non-virtues. So I'm speaking of an incident that happened with this. I was 10 years into Buddhism. And I remember something ran in front of my car. And I remember, having this instantaneous breaks went on, but there was like an instant, like I want to refrain from killing it. And I realized, oh my, this is it, right? This is the ethics which abandons killing. This is it happening right now. I'm actively abandoning. I'm actively trying not to harm this sentient being. It's actually occurring. It was like, I had thought about it before, but I actually felt it. Like, and this is a decade in, I really felt it. I felt like an instantaneous thing happened in my mind of abandoning killing. And this is like maybe 15 years into being a vegetarian, not wanting to harm animals, crying as a kid about having to eat animals because they were killed and so forth, like really getting this, it's one of the first things that made sense to me kind of in Buddhism. But really, really realizing such a simple thing was just abandoning killing, was actually actively doing it, actively making sure that I'm not engaging in that, actively making sure that that's just present in my mind. And I saw it kind of when we talk about meditation, making the object of meditation penetrate our mind. I saw Rinpoche's teachings at that moment had penetrated my mind and made kind of my mind into that way of being. And that's such a small thing and an obvious thing, right? How many of us stop the car to not hit a squirrel or something, right? But at that moment, something clicked with me. And it was so far in, and you would think, oh, why didn't it click before? Rinpoche said it 300,000 times, before that, right? Like the first couple of years, Rinpoche was at the Chenrezig Tibetan Buddhist Center. He was like the small scope Lama in terms of like fire and brimstones and the lower realms, and the higher realms stink, and suffering and causes of suffering and getting rid of it. And, you're going to die. And he was really focused on, engage in virtue and abandon non-virtue. And he was so invested in that in the initial days. And I really, really just so greatly appreciated it. So please don't ever think that this repeated analysis, isn't going to be of some help in saturating the mind. Don't get bored with it. Let go of that boredom and allow your mind just to sink into, that truth that maybe you understand, but just let your mind sink deeper into that truth, deeper into the understanding of what the suffering of change is. Suffering of change is so subtle. When we look at like what we think of as happiness that we chase after, right, keeps us in cyclic existence. Geshe Dorje Damdu, I'm preparing for the final. of this particular phase. And I was looking at the transcripts, and just such an incredible example he gives of the suffering of change, right? So if someone was put into a prison and given a death sentence, right? And, in one prison, there's really strict guards, and, both of them are escapable prisons, and there's strict guards in one, and they like sometimes beat the prisoners and treat them like animals. And the other one has like swimming pools, has really nice stuff in it. But at the end of 365 days, both inmates will be put to death, right? So which, inmate is going to probably want to escape more, which is going to have more of a tendency to want to definitely emerge? The inmate that really recognizes, the suffering, and isn't tricked by, the circumstances around them and wants to get out of that suffering? Or the person who's, in the swimming pool and enjoying themselves, saying, oh, it's not bad, maybe tomorrow I'll do something about it. And then, the prison term comes up and you're put to death. And the other person saw, the suffering of their circumstances, because they weren't distracted. They saw they were in a prison, right? Because they weren't distracted by these things that they were searching after that distracted them from getting out. And they escaped the prison. And we're just like that. We know better. We know Buddha said that these contaminated things are suffering, but then we still think, if we don't have enough money, just another 10,000, right? That'll do it. That's all I need. And then I'll be happy. I'll finally be happy. We start chasing after these things that couldn't possibly produce the result that we think that they can. And they keep us trapped in cyclic existence. They keep us coming back for more. And the only thing they've kept us coming back for more of is suffering, is these contaminated aggregates, right? That are mental and physicalities that have to experience suffering. Our self-cherishing attitude has never brought us anywhere but into a state of suffering, and to more and more and more attachment. It's like this demon we have inside of us of self-grasping and self-cherishing. That's like this maniacal kind of thing in us that's out of control, that's driving us towards suffering over and over and over again. It's kind of like in Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, it says, let me use this human basis like a boat to, cross through the river towards enlightenment. We're using it for different purposes over and over and over again. We're using this human basis as a boat to drive to more suffering, just to get more and more and more suffering. And that suffering of change is very, very subtle. And if we don't look at it and don't understand it, we'll just think that, oh, it's just like the suffering of suffering. Oh, it's just headaches and stuff. So I just take a Tylenol, I can make that go away. Or I lost a loved one, I'll get a new one. It's just really, really strange the way that we kind of emphasize things and change, and because we don't really, really let our minds be penetrated with this fact that no matter where we go, we're in a prison, right? No matter where we go to try to seek some sort of contaminated happiness, it's like being in a prison. There's going to be some temporary happiness. Maybe we can have some satisfaction for a short period of time, but we won't be able to have that, permanent state of happiness. It will go away and turn into a state of suffering because of the pervasive compounded suffering that will force us again and again and again into a set of aggregates. So it's so important that we don't forget this, that, it says that when we are really, really mindful, in Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, it says when we've really got this thing down and we have introspection working, we don't ever say, oh, I have to, what was I thinking about? Or, oh, I have to bring it back to the object of observation. We're there all the time in it, right? So we're supposed to be, like, as much as we can, working our minds towards that shift over and over and over again. And it's going to take so much to shift this kind of thought pattern that's been incorrect, right? Since beginningless time, we have this kind of grasping and this ignorance that just keeps perpetuating the cycle. And it's just such a simple fix, but it's the most difficult fix there could ever be, right? So it's because of that And it's because we haven't studied enough to believe it. I mean, really, folks, it's the truth. We haven't analyzed this stuff and studied enough and really, really created enough of this truth universe around us to make our universe that truth. We just haven't. And if we have studied so much and we have all this information, then we haven't meditated on it. We haven't analyzed it. We haven't tried to first get single pointed concentration and calm our mind down. And we haven't analyzed it, and then we haven't put the two together to try to make a change. So we have to really, really make sure that we're doing all facets of this. That's why when we begin with a meditation, I try to give an example of fixing mind. Fixing the mind on something. And you eventually get to the point where you could fix your mind on that image of Buddha for 4 hours without moving off it in a state of complete mental and physical pliancy. Like just, kind of like this mental and physical pliancy that would make it so easy just to sit with this single image. Now imagine if you could take that mind and now you have this other mind that gets really, really good at analyzing things. And the more that this mind knows how to focus so clearly, the more you could just laser-like analyze things. And then these two get closer and closer together to the point where they unite, and you can your wisdom and your concentration can kind of become one. And that's that union of calm abiding and special insight that occurs right before you see emptiness. So wow, right? So that's why we want to become accustomed to all these types of meditation. One thing that I wish I focused more on, and when I was a beginner, and not so much more on, but a little more on, were some of the calming types of meditations, just as like maybe 5 minutes a day, right? Not saying, sit for hours and breathe in and breathe out. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying get your mind accustomed to doing it, to it, telling it what to do. And the best way to do that and stop it and slow it down is bring it to one object. So one thing I could suggest is that when you're studying, and you're trying to figure out all of this and you're getting more and more wisdom, you're training your mind in that wisdom and analysis. You also need to train it to calm down and to get to the point where you can focus singly. In a fixed way. So make sure that your meditations include both of those things. And that would be my suggestion for this evening. And my analyzing and really, really, having a chance to sit back and overview. And in, later years, I got more into that fixed meditation. But I think that some of my analysis could have been more focused, and I don't think I would have forgotten as much as I have had I had better ability to concentrate, had I really honed in my concentration skills better. And that's not to say, I mean, we always can do better, right? I don't sit and dwell in it. But when I'm giving advice, I can see how beneficial that would be. And the last thing I want to say about that is what happened is when I first got into Buddhism, before I really got into much, I got into the breathing meditation, and I became very kind of almost like, it was almost like a high for me, almost like an addiction. And I saw how I could get lost in it, even before, maybe even before I found actual Buddhism, like right before. I started doing this breathing stuff because I was studying the Bodhicitta and different things. And I just found that I was getting lost and spacey. And I found, then I got to Buddhism and was doing it a little bit, and then felt like I was deluding myself, and then just focused for many, many years just on studying. And I think that if I had been able to be more balanced, right, and see the benefit of doing both, and more study than anything, Dalai Lama always says first. And Dalai Lama's on tonight, by the way, so make sure you're on live with him. He's teaching Chandrakirti's Madhyamika Avatara 2 nights, so we're very, very lucky. So go right over and see what time, because it's always changing on the YouTube. Go to Dalai Lama Live now and you'll see the countdown. So that's on tonight. So anyway, I think that's enough. So the Dalai Lama always says, my point to this was that study first, the most, but also do this calming meditation so that your mind isn't so wild it can't study well, right? That's enough out of me. Does anybody have any questions? I know it's 9 now. Thank you, everybody on the other applications. that are watching, and I hope it's been of some benefit to you. I really try to present these teachings in the way that Khyentse Geshe Wandok did, almost like a parakeet, to make sure that there isn't any kind of deviation from the main point. And I think that there's enough students here that were there with Rinpoche for, sometimes, decades, that would call me out real quickly if they heard me freestyling. So it's like, in the mind training teachings, it says rely on the two witnesses. So yourself and others. So don't just go by what the external world says, look at your own mind, because everyone might be praising you and you may be a horrible person inside. But don't just think about, if you're the greatest person inside, you better check with the witnesses of the outside world. A friend of mine used to say, if, one person thinks you're a jerk, forget it. Two people think you're a jerk. You may want to look at it. Three people think you're a jerk. You may be a jerk. You probably are. So that being said, we'll close. So let's rely upon the two witnesses, and let's try to become better human beings every single day of our lives, because if we do that, then we can become a Buddha. And if we don't become better, we aren't maturing. And non-maturation creates more samsara. Maturation creates Buddhahood. 8 verses on training the mind by Geshe Langri Tamba. When we become bodhisattvas, this poem will be our mind. Lord Atisha said that, don't worry, if you've never met me, get bodhicitta and you'll know my mind. So when we become a bodhisattva, this will be our mind. Our mind will work like this. The 8 verses on training the mind by Geshe Langri Tamba. With a determination to accomplish the highest welfare of all sentient beings who surpass even a wish-granting jewel, I will learn to hold them supremely dear. Whenever I associate with others, I will learn to think of myself as the lowest amongst all and respectively hold others to be supreme from the very depths of my heart. In all actions, I will learn to search into my mind. As soon as a disturbing emotion arises, endangering myself and others, I will firmly face and avert it. I will learn to cherish ill-natured beings and those oppressed by strong misdeeds and sufferings as if I had found a precious treasure difficult to find. When others out of jealousy treat me badly with abuse, slander, and so on, I will learn to take all loss and offer victory to them. When the one who I benefited with great hope unreasonably hurts me very badly, I will learn to view that person as an excellent spiritual guide. In short, I will learn to offer to everyone, everywhere, without exception, all help and happiness directly and indirectly, and respectively take upon myself all the harm and suffering of my mothers. I will learn to keep all these practices undefiled by the stains of the 8 worldly concern, and by understanding all phenomena as like illusion, be released from the bondage of attachment. Now, again, we imagine all the gurus, Buddhas, and bodhisattvas in space in front of us, and all sentient beings around us as we make a Thanksgiving mandala offering for the teaching. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure land. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Zandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you're the source of all benefit and happiness, all powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso. May you stay until samsara's end. I pray that we may never be separated from Khyentse Geshe Wandok in all of our lives, whatever emanation he or she chooses to show us, whether it's the emanation body in the regular worlds or the enjoyment body when we become Arya Bodhisattvas. May we never in any life be separated from Khyentse Geshe Wandok until we become a Buddha. And then may we help Khyentse Geshe Wandok free all sentient beings from the state of suffering as a Buddha. Thank you so much, everyone. So grateful to get to do this and to be able to study over and over again. So grateful for this text right here, Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. It's like a secret text I never saw had all this stuff in until now. So I encourage you all to read it. I encourage you all to become better sentient beings, and I'll see you on Sunday. So thank you so much.